A good teacher, what makes a good teacher? A good teacher empowers each student. A good teacher, we've said, encourages, convinces students that they can learn what they're supposed to learn. And how do we do that? We give them some tools. And so today we're going to talk about some neuroscientific tools that we can teach our students so that they can learn better. Several years ago, I read an article about high schools in the United States. And the authors came to the conclusion, it was a research article, that in order to survive in a United States high school, the students had to become moderately depressed. and that kind of is what school does to you. And this is my 45th year in education. And I'm convinced that we do kill a lot of the enthusiasm and the curiosity of students by the way schools are structured. So I'm trying to solve that problem. Right now, I'm at a university. I'm going the wrong way. There we go. I'm at a university that is known as a Hispanic-serving, minority-serving institution. Most of the students at Mercy College are students of color. Many of them don't have a lot of money. They're a low socioeconomic status. They're students who have not received the approbation of their teachers in school, many of them. And Mercy College's mission is to work with these students, the students who really have been told, you shouldn't go to college. Or, you should. One of my students said, they told me I should become a janitor. And so how do you change that? How do you change that? From the ones who succeed have to be moderately depressed. How do you change that real depression of being told, you are not one of the winners, you are one of the losers? And so that's my life mission. I like that mission myself. Now, this is going to be available to everybody, and so it's going to be in slideshow mode. You can go to these links. Have you ever heard of Angela Duckworth? She's a MacArthur Award winner. I have seen her speak. She's very engaging. She said that in order to succeed in school, you have to have grit. One of the things that I see in my students is they give up a lot. In New York State is notorious. It wants to be the most difficult state to become a teacher. They think that if they do that, we're going to have the best teachers. We're going to have the best educational system. And so to become a teacher in New York State, you have to take certification exams. And certification exams are made up by a company. They're not designed by educators. They're designed by a testing company, Pearson, a British testing company. And that company is making millions of dollars, billions of dollars on these certification exams that there's very little proof that they make good teachers. But in order to become a teacher, you have to take these exams. Some of our students who are getting 3 certifications, childhood, early childhood, and special ed, they take $1,000 worth of tests, 9 tests, some of them. And something I found going to Mercy, I'm the dean there only since January, is that our pass rates are not that high, for one, but the other thing is the students aren't even taking the tests. Somehow in their minds they're thinking that if I don't take it, I don't have to pass it. So I have a whole bunch of students who are saying they're in our program and they're not taking the tests at all. I've instituted so many support systems. Most of the people in childhood and early childhood fail the math portion of the test. So we have math tutoring from our great math teachers in the area. But there's something that is stopping them from even trying. And that something is their fear, right? It's fear, their lack of grit. I don't know, Angela Duckworth made millions of dollars and came up with a really good theory. I don't know if I can go to these, this doesn't point, sites, but she has a very short quiz that you can take and get the score. Now, there are no right answers on this quiz to find out how much grit you have. And so I've given that to the students, having them thinking about, how gritty they are. We're not talking about war here. We're talking about school. And they have to have courage and perseverance, which is fine, you do. But I wanted to take it from away from having to act like it's a war to something a lot more peaceful. And so I kept searching around. I hope you're all familiar with the work of Carol Dweck in Mindset. She says that if you have, and you can go there to the Mindset online link and see what mindset is. Mindsets are our beliefs about ourselves and who we are. And a lot of those beliefs are formed by our experiences as children. I'm very distressed at hearing how much corporal punishment went on in Irish schools. And I wonder how many children were negatively affected by that. Their views of themselves as learners were negatively affected by that. And so the mindset would be, I am bad. I need to be repaired in some way. And that's the kind of mindset a lot of people have. I drive in New York. Now you drive in New York, it's something. And I'm convinced most people are unconscious. No, most people are not thinking about what they're doing. They're thinking about something else, and they're really not where they are. They're not mindful. And so if you have a mindset that's fixed, like Carol Dweck says, and you say, I can't do this and I can't do that, you don't learn, you don't change. And she talks about a growth mindset, developing a growth mindset so that you can improve yourself when you want to. You also have to want to, which is another thing that schools sometimes don't help people to do. Schools do a lot of teaching and students do a lot of learning, but are they really motivating students to be better selves? So mindset is another theory that I've tried with my students to help them feel more able to do things on these tests. There's also a movement of mindfulness in education. It's very big in Great Britain. I Googled mindfulness in Ireland and I found it. There's this Facebook page. There's another one. The second one is that, what's mindfulness? It's a being aware of your metacognitive self. I ran a reading program for many years, and when we read, a lot happens unconsciously in our minds. A lot is going on metacognitively. It's the hidden cognition that's associated with reading. If you're reading something, you're connecting what you're reading to what you already know. That's your comprehension, is based on what you already know and what your mindset is as a person. And so mindfulness is making that subconscious stuff conscious so that you can work with it. It's not, touchy-feely. You don't have to be a Buddhist or something like that. It's not a religion. Mindfulness is a cognitive practice that you can teach your students so that they can then change what they want to change. I'm Italian. I'm an Italian American. My parents were from Italy. Everybody in my neighborhood in New York was Italian when I was growing up. Italians are notoriously emotional and worry all the time. My mother used to have this sign, like that, because she was worrying all the time. So I learned that. I learned that kind of train of thought. It's watching that train. Your mind is working all the time, and it's not controlled. The train of thought going through our minds is always happening. Stopping to look at it and then viewing it dispassionately without judging what you're thinking, saying, wait, is that true, is what mindfulness is all about. So the self-referencing thought of some of my students is, I messed up on that, this is too hard for me, I'm afraid of the test, I don't want to take it. It's minding the subconscious and consciously changing it. And this actually has now some physical evidence in the brain. We have physical evidence for this. So reframing the messages. When we reflect on the messages we are thinking without controlling it, and you can choose alternative ways of looking at your situation. You sit and think about, you hear the thoughts come, and you don't judge them, but you think, oh, geez, why am I thinking that? And dispassionately observe the messages and consult with your disinterested observer. What the authors of an article that I'm referencing here, Schwartz and al., there's going to be a book that will come out in 2018 with this concept of wise leadership. They call this your wise advocate. There's an old book written in the 1930s. I can't remember the name of the author, called Think and Grow Rich. That man would meditate, and he would consult his higher self. He called that person his higher self. And the guy really did think himself rich. He did get rich. So it's a very popular book in the United States, as you can imagine, where being rich is like it's supposed to be the goal you're supposed to have. These authors call this wise leader your wise advocate. It's you looking at your thoughts and saying, wait, do I want to think that? Do I want to think that I'm ugly? Do I want to think that I'm old? Do I want to think that I can't do that? And then changing it and just changing the story. It's changing the story from one that is uncontrolled to one that is under your control. It's being aware of how you feel and act when you're thinking the reframed thoughts, and then be aware of others and how they respond to you after you have reframed your story. And for many of our students, their story has to be reframed because their story is one of, I can't. So they have the wise leadership hypothesis. You change your cognitive habits and in a mindful way. It's your awareness of your own mental activity, which is a mental activity that happens all the time. Tibetan Buddhists call the mind the wild monkey because you really can't stop that train of thought. Your brain is made to do this. Another piece of mindfulness and changing that story is mentalizing, paying close attention to what other people are thinking. These are skills. Leo talks about pushing skills. These are cognitive skills that our students can learn so that they can learn better. Focus your attention in critical moments of choice can build your capacity to be an effective leader. That's what these neuroscientists are saying. Mentalizing is paying close attention to what other people are thinking, also while you're paying close attention to what you're thinking. They talk about the high road and the low road. The high road is your dorsal prefrontal cortex. That's the executive center of your brain. The low road is the habit center, the amygdala, the part that is more instinctive. If you feel great fear, the amygdala will kick in, right? You get the fight or flight syndrome. You're not thinking. It can happen. There was a great little video on the news last night in New York, the other night in New York, where somehow a mouse got on a subway car. And you see half the women are standing up on the car going, ah! Not thinking. That's the fear. That's when your amygdala takes over. That's the low road. And if you don't pay attention to what you're thinking, your mind is on the low road, mindlessly driving while you're thinking about your problems at work. That is the lower part of your brain. So they talk about the high road and the low road, meaning there's a part of your brain that's higher than the other. And it's up here where you're firing the neurons when you're being mindful that you can exercise this part of your brain. And it really is like weightlifting. like exercise. Your brain does get stronger in the areas that you use it in. So this is a bad picture of a graphic from that's going to be in their book next year, but I hope you'll be able to read it on your own. So there is interaction between your mind and your brain. Your mind affects your brain. What you choose to focus on in your mind affects the physical brain. This is called self-directed neuroplasticity. It's a concept in neuroscience that is proven by, for one thing, physically, when you use an area of your brain, blood flows to that area. And so this is how they're able to tell that there's the high road and the low road. In the 1950s, a scientist named Hebb saw this without having any physical proof. And he said, neurons that fire together wire together. What happens with your neurons, remember your brain is a pattern-seeking device, and it shows you that by having patterns of neurons. Everything is connected. And so the parts of your brain that you use are like roads that get ruts in them. These become your habitual places where you're thinking. And so if you're thinking negative things about yourself, then that's going to be your normal thought process. And you want your students to think positive things about themselves as learners, especially. Frequent thought patterns form neural pathways that can become stronger with time. They become automatic. So wouldn't you want your students to be automatically thinking that they can learn, that they can pass the test, rather than automatically thinking that they can't, which is that's their default setting, is automatically thinking that they can't. So the low road is a reactive, self-referencing center. This is the center where your ego is more involved. It's subjective valuation. It's concerned with what's relevant and valuable. Your dialogue is self-oriented. It's your hopes and fears. It's gut-level responses. And that is the default road that we were on. When you respond to deep-seated anxieties and fears from this area, the intensity can override logical thought. Daniel Goleman in Emotional Intelligence called this the amygdala hijack. Remember that in that book? That was a great book. They call it the lizard brain, the habit center. So brushing your teeth without thinking, driving. There's a lot of people driving without thinking. It's all or nothing thinking, too. You're a winner or you're a loser, where you're not really attending to the other possibilities. The high road. Adam Smith was a meditator. And he had, they call it, in their book, The Wise Advocate, the guy in Think and Grow Rich called it his higher self. Adam Smith called it his impartial spectator. The main thing about having this view from the balcony, I tell my students, you view yourself from the balcony, is that you're not judging yourself and you're not feeling those gut reactions of anxiety while you're viewing it. They call it the wise advocate. Thoughts from the high road are not just focused on desires, needs, and successes. They focus on the long term and not on the most expedient outcome or trying to make other people happy. So this is your long-term goal is you want to graduate from college. That's good. And so you'll focus on that rather than on, oh my God, I have a test tomorrow. The high road is deliberative self-referencing, actively considering the thought, thinking, and valuations of others. And it's the executive function, working memory, accessing information. It's the dorsal part of the frontal lobe. Cognitive flexibility, seeing multiple perspectives and being able to see the subtle connections between them. We have a lot of thinking in our world today where people are not seeing each other's perspectives. I think, we've talked about it with, look at the United States and the American president and what's happening there. And that's not taking the high road. That's the low road part of the brain. A lot of people are thinking there in that area. The high road is the home of self-regulation and inhibition of habitual and impulsive behaviors.
I think we're seeing an awful lot of impulsive behaviors in the leader of my country. Walter Mischel, the marshmallow test that Daniel Goleman referenced in Emotional Intelligence. You sat a 4-year-old in a room with marshmallows and said, "I'll be right back, don't touch the marshmallows." And they had a camera on there, and, and the children who ate the marshmallow later on were less successful in life than the children who did not. The ones who could control their impulses were more successful. So we're talking about something that cognitively is a lifelong thing that you can control, but people aren't being taught to control it. We're not talking about this. The wise advocate to Schwartz and his authors is not a metaphor. They say it's a real mental phenomenon, and they can show it physically. Repeated attention results in new neural pathways. It's hard work. And they ask the question, why don't people do this? Because it takes time and it's hard work. It's just like, why don't people stay fit? Because it takes time and it's hard work. So they take the easy way out, I guess. But if you don't take the easy way out, you're a lot more likely to succeed and be a happy person. We talked a little bit about happiness yesterday. Happiness is what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be happy. But it may take some work. There were mentalizing experiments in social neuroscience where subjects viewed pictures and they talked about them, and that's how they can talk. That activated the deliberative self-referencing center, the higher road. So mentalizing and mindfulness are cognitive skills that go hand in hand. Exercising the high road circuits helps us to step back and look at any situation with a wise advocate frame of mind. And so that's what I'm teaching my students, and I hope that can help you, inspire you to teach yours. Thanks.